Life is sweet. Let it sweep you off your feet.
Hi, this is Ali from Find Your Joy. Please remember to like and subscribe. So today, how exciting! We have two incredible entrepreneurial, community-minded pals from forever with a new business, and this is exciting. DaisyChain Legacy Publishing, and I think I was at the your grand opening the other day. And I would say, I would encourage every family, once you hear about what they do, bringing people's stories to life, I just think it's a beautiful gift for families. I mean, that's my side of how I see it. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that it will go. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Allie. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for
Yeah.
being here. So, um, just you go ahead. There's three of us. There will be no lack of words in this in this episode. Tell me, as much as you would like to, about how this started, the brainchild, how this all worked, and where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start. Maybe because I approached Kare initially about this idea, although I didn't know it at the time. She'd already had the idea years before and just had never fully brought it to life. And so the timing was perfect. And we said, yeah, let's do this together. So we both felt there's a real need to leave a lasting legacy of our stories, not just our stories, but those who came before us, their stories. And I know personally, my mom has written her mother-in-law's story from recorded tapes and interviews and journal writings. And so when I passed that along to my son, so my son never knew his great grandmother and
Right.
barely knows his grandmother because we live in opposite ends of the country. But for him, it was super important and kind of eye-opening to read his great-grandmother's story of leaving Russia and coming to Canada because that's part of his history. And so he was super excited to read that and understand a little bit where he came from. And even that helped him learn more about himself. So for me, that was a big part of, wanting to give this opportunity to more people.
I love that.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. And just so all your listeners know, Allie, our mandate with DaisyChain Legacy Publishing is to preserve life stories through collaborative publishing. So we'll get into sort of what that means in a minute. But I know, we're often motivated in life by what we've experienced. We're motivated to like make a choice or take a pathway based on, what our past has been. And I know that that's very true for Anita and I. She talked a little bit about her son and her son reading, his great grandmother's story and, just being, awakened by sort of what those generations previously had been through, because every generation thinks they're really all that unique and thinks that their generation is the one that has just gone through the most crap, but
Right.
that's not always true. But all that to say that I know Anita and I have talked a lot about this together, and we've shared this also with other people that we ourselves have experienced, quite a bit of losses in our lives. And that is a very powerful motivator. I know myself, my mom died when she was 68. Her sister, who was, my dearest aunt and also like a second mother to me, died when she was 62, and having those losses so young, the losses of that generation, I felt like they passed on way too early,
Mm.
and I felt very alone because of that in some ways. I'm the oldest daughter out of five children, three girls, two boys, so kind of the surrogate mom, and I felt a lot of burden around that. And then I also thought, gosh, I heard so many of their stories over the years, and yet nothing ever was written down. Nothing really ever got captured. All that is gone now. I have so much of my own life that I'm living, stress that I'm going through, challenges that I'm overcoming, that that when we don't take the time to capture the stories of those we love and make legacy from that, that then we can hold dear and pass on to other ones, all of those oral histories kind of just fade away. And that was a powerful motivation for me once Anita approached me. Yes, I'd already had the idea. And one of the reasons I had the idea of capturing life stories, helping people write their memoir, was because I love stories. I'm fascinated by biography. I'm fascinated by people, how they lived their lives, how the decisions they made, the pathways they went through. But then when it became really personal because of those early losses, then I thought, oh, something really has to be done here. So fast forward a few years and Anita approached me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so aligned. We're so aligned because I just didn't want people, I didn't want stories to be lost. Really, at the end of the day, I wanted people to be able to create those legacies so that so that the truth of what somebody experienced, good and bad, could be passed on, for future generations, and to create those actual written histories that I think are going to become so important in the future.
Yeah, it's funny that you say about having those things lost. Part of my impetus in starting this when I did was a friend of mine who lost three parents, like two of her own parents and a step parent, within a short, like 1 to 2 year period. And, even before they actually passed away, I think two of them had dementia. And so there's loss before the final loss sometimes. And something she said to me afterwards was the only regret she had was not having learned more of their stories before that point. And that was a huge kind of wake up call to me, is like, yes, people have stories, and we don't always think our story is so fascinating because we just lived it. It's just like our life. But when other people hear our stories, they're like, "Oh, so cool, you did that. You traveled here, or you left that country. I didn't know that about you." And so it is interesting to others. So that was a huge thing for me to have that wake up call.
That's awesome. And the
Yeah.
two things that come to me when you're saying that is I'm so interested in ancestry and
Mhm.
lineages and where did I come from? And so there's that part of it. And then I was thinking about oral histories that are very prevalent in, well, most of our cultures, a lot of us have lost those cultures. But even when I think of my friends' indigenous cultures and Celtic and in Jewish culture, the oral histories, and they're really awesome for passing on what they pass on. But there's going to be a lot of things that will never capture. And then the other part of it for me is that our communities don't really lend themselves to keeping an actual oral history anymore anyways, where there would be witnesses and the thing would be spoken and all these people would agree to remember that thing. But
Mhm.
that's even limited there. So what I love about this is that, like we're talking, right? So we've both my husband and I, we've in the last, say 5 years, we've both lost our mums and dads. I've lost two brothers. Like it's been a death parade. Like it's just been, and the thing that hits me most is I feel like I become more aware that every time someone passes away, a library burns down. And I want to
Uh,
know that. I want to know. I, my brother Jamie was so good at, he was like, yeah, like when we were in hospice with my dad, he was so aware. We would be talking about it daily. Like, what do we need to know? Like, what have we not got yet that we want to be able to carry that on because it matters. And even if I'm 20, I shouldn't say what any other 20-year-old would know. I wasn't acutely aware of how important that would be to me when I was younger. Now
yeah.
that I'm, over 20, I'm like, I'm like, oh man, this matters so much to me. And I can go through vital statistics, but
Mhm.
imagine starting this now And by the time our great grandkids, excuse me, are around, they can just read it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you made a good point, Ali, about the ancestry piece, because with the ancestry.com and 23andMe and all these platforms, we can learn a lot, but it's limited. It's facts, right? Oh, this is your cousin. This is, and my brother is super great at building our family tree and understanding who we're related to and twice removed and all that stuff. And he's great with photos and marking their, when that happened on what day. And, photos bring a lot of things alive to us. But if we could pair that with the story, right, it just brings it to life and makes the complete picture
Yes.
in a way that just knowing our ancestry doesn't.
Yeah. So, so just again for the listeners, maybe I'll just take this moment to like explain a little bit more that DaisyChain Legacy Publishing is really focused on chapter length memoir. And that's kind of what makes us different than other writing services and ghostwriters and memoir kind of companies. Because when most people think of a memoir, they think of an entire book. And that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why the average person's memoir never gets written, because an entire book is really overwhelming. Thinking about 50,000 words, 100,000 words, most people aren't professional writers. Most people do not have professional writing experience. And thinking about filling the pages of an entire book is absolutely overwhelming. Or even using a memoir service in which the end goal is an entire book, that takes sometimes years to get all of that together. So DaisyChain Legacy is Publishing is different in the way that what we do is we help people capture their life story in one chapter. So, and it's not autobiography. It's not an entire journey. It's not birth to death. That's not what memoir is. Memoir is a snapshot within somebody's life. It is a lesson learned, a journey taken, a success had, maybe a puzzle worked through. It's a moment in time. Not to say that we couldn't literally write somebody's entire life journey from beginning to end and complete that whole book. We could do that. But our mandate is to create life stories, memoirs that are chapter length, so less than 5,000 words, to make it not overwhelming, to say, hey, we've got you. We know that everybody has at least one chapter in them, and our goal is to help those chapters be told.
It's so funny you say that too, because I gave my son the option to read like a 13,000 word, which still is not even a whole book.
Yes.
The 13,000 word version of my grandmother's story or the 4,500 word version. And he immediately, read the shorter one. Young kids, I mean, he's in his 20s. They don't have time or don't want to take the time to read a long thing because at the beginning, they don't even know that they're interested. Now that he's read the shorter one, maybe he would read the longer one to see what more he could learn. But he right away gravitated to the shorter one so that he could have a quick, we're an instant generation right now. Everybody wants things fast and short.
Yes.
So I think it works really well. And also add to what Kare said is while it's a snapshot in time, it doesn't mean like a day or a week. It could be like your marriage. So it could have a theme. So it could be the marriage theme
Nice,
or the moving to another country theme or raising children theme. So we can boil down a long period of time into a theme as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to just say a couple of things before I forget, because Ali, I really loved what you said earlier, and I hope you're going to allow us to use that quote. We will credit you on that, which is, when somebody dies, a library burns down. And that hit me because that's exactly what we're saying. That's exactly true, because in here, our memories, our experiences, our thoughts, our opinions, our interpretations, that is a library. We are libraries. We are individual walking, living libraries. And when somebody dies and their life comes to an end, that library goes with them unless themselves or one of their loved ones have taken the time, to capture what they can from that library. I will say, and I want to make sure everybody understands this, that it's actually not too late, even if you have a loved one that is already passed on, to create a
Right.
memoir from their life. So we have two sample memoirs that we do make available from time to time if people want to read them. And one was written, and it's Anita's grandmother. And we wrote that, and it was taken from interviews with her when she was alive, but we compiled it into a memoir long after she died. And then we did another one with my mom, and it was taken from interviews that I personally did with my mom, like we're talking a decade and a half ago, and she died like 10 years ago. And then just recently, I compiled the answers to the questions that I asked her back when I did that interview with her, and wrote that into a memoir. So there's always a way that we can, if a family member, loved one is interested in creating some kind of legacy for somebody that has already passed on, we can still do that. So I don't want anybody to think that if anybody has already died, that their library is completely lost. Reach out to us anyways. We will work with them to find a way to capture that legacy in the best way possible. And then, if you don't mind, just really quickly, the other thing I wanted to say was part of why this is so important is accuracy. So, and here's the story. So my children used to ask me all the time to tell stories of my childhood. So I'm going to have to be writing memoirs about that, because some of my childhood stories, are hilarious. But they wanted me to tell them stories of my childhood and my young adulthood all the time, because of course we were very unsupervised back in like the 60s and 70s. So we got into lots of trouble that then my children born in the 90s never got into, because, those 2 decades in there changed parenting forever. But anyways, what's so interesting is that I would tell my stories to my children often. And then years later, my daughter would regurgitate those stories back to me. So, oh yeah, remember the time when you did this, Mom, or you did that, or you told us this? And her version was way wrong. Not there in the oral telling of. I'm like, we totally forgot how to play that game of telephone. But I was like, okay, well, this proves to me that I really need to write this down and get her to read it and keep it, because otherwise she's going to be telling things that I never did and I never would have done.
It's like that telephone game, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
true.
So accuracy is something that is important to us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other part, like you're saying, even if the three of us were at a coffee shop right now,
Yeah.
and a couple came in and were arguing about something, and then later someone asked us to recount what happened,
Yes.
the chances that we would, the three of us, give the same account of what just occurred
Yes.
and this is, I mean, I remember that I was robbed once, and I remember the police officer that I was dating at the time. Anyways, I remember somebody telling us that, yeah, everybody has a different, so getting it as fast as possible with first simple, like just easy tell the story with not a lot of details, and then go into it with the details and the way that we recounted and just what we notice. I mean, I don't know, maybe they would be arguing and maybe I would be thinking, oh my gosh, I love her dress. And maybe someone else would be thinking, I don't like how he's talking to her. And someone else might be thinking, I think she was kind of rude at the beginning. Like it would just, what of our life experience, like I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're all telling the truth. Remember that thing about you have someone stands, a tall person usually, stands in the middle of the room, and then someone stands at the right shoulder, someone stands at the left shoulder, someone stands in the front, and someone stands in the back. And each person describes what they see.
Right.
Each are accurate.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually have a whole podcast episode ourselves on memories and can we trust them, right?
Oh, beautiful.
Because my aunt and uncle had done one of these tours in Europe, and they came back and you would have thought they were on 2 totally separate trips, because he's a geologist and he's looking at the rocks, and she likes history. And so they had a completely different view of that trip, but both are correct. And we don't want someone to let that stop them from writing their story because this is their story from their view.
Right.
And
Yes.
so there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong in it. It is what they experienced, and
Yeah.
that's can be totally different, like you said, than someone else.
And it's what do I want my message to be to someone who comes
Yeah.
after me? That's what I like is there's many people could have many stories of Allie, right? There are and if but
Yeah.
if I'm passing something on, if I would like something to stay when I'm gone for my kids and my grandkids
Yeah.
and my great, I mean, I can get sad that I'm never going to meet my great great great. Like I'm like, oh, I, but I might want to tell them something.
And you
Yes.
can.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can. And I love that. I love that. I love it. It's such a wonderful idea. And I think, like you said, that it's a chapter. So someone could choose to do more if they want to, but you will help them get that rounded into one chapter. Well, that might be intimidating for some people, but it would be much less at least. What a
Yeah. I
great
mean,
gift to give someone, eh?
yeah, we
Yes.
believe that while not everyone may be a good author, everyone has a good story. And
Yes.
so we
Oh,
help
I
them
like that.
pull that story out of them through a couple different ways. So one is if someone's comfortable just free writing, go
Yep.
for it, right? And we'll help them bring it down to the a chapter length and edit it together with them to make them happy and make it make sense. Or we can email someone questions when we have a proprietary source of questions
Yeah.
depending on their theme. So we send them questions on that theme that they answer, and then we compile that. Or if they don't even feel like they can write that, we can do an oral interview with them where we ask them the questions. And then we take their answers and transcribe them and put that together for them. And we also encourage them to have maybe a family member, a daughter or a son who can work with them because sometimes if they don't know where to start, having a loved one ask them a question, you know what I really want to know about you, mom or dad, is this.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that, oh, and you know that the another one of the reasons I was really interested in starting this was on my mom's 80th birthday. We all surprised her and flew out to Ontario and had this big party surprising her for her birthday. And all the grandchildren were there. And, my dad wanted them to give speeches and stuff. And of course, they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't even know grandma very well.
Right.
So instead, I had each of them write two questions that they want to know about grandma's life. And
Oh,
and then they got up and asked their question. And then my mom just shared. And, at the beginning, she was a little hesitant, but as the questions came, she just lit up. Like, oh, somebody wants to know like what kind of music I listened to when I was a teenager, or
yeah.
who I dated in high school, or, whatever the grandkids were interested in, they could ask her. And they were interested too, because they were getting answers to their questions. So that's another great way someone can get started is just have a loved one ask them, like, tell them, this is what I want to know about you. Like, that's so interesting, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it helps. I can just see it building relationships, honoring the person that you're asking the questions
Mhm.
to, and developing that curiosity because sometimes like how often have we been in a room and someone asks someone a question and we're thinking, "Oh, what a great question. Why did I never ask anyone that question?"
Yeah.
Then now I have my own long string of questions because that one thing inspired the creativity in me to even wonder about that. And that has been the story of my life, sisters, is that I so often will see someone ask a question and think, "Oh, that's a good question." So I
Mhm.
like this too, to remind people that if you're thinking right now, if you're listening and maybe you're 20 and you want to do this first chapter, maybe you're going to do a chapter a decade. Wouldn't that be a great idea?
That
Is
would. I
get
love that.
someone to do a chapter a decade,
Yeah.
and then they would have this glorious thing to leave their family. It would be wonderful, but also just to remember, I don't know, maybe buy this gift for your mom and dad, or your nana and papa, or like, because if you don't know yet that you're going to really want to know these things, that's what I would tell anyone. Listeners, I wanted to, if you do not yet know that one day there is going to be things you wish you knew, I promise you there will be. And this will be about people that you love. This,
Yes.
there's, they, as people, my mom used to say, it's the hard thing about living a long life is all the people that you lose,
Mhm.
right? That one day you're the last one.
Yeah.
And but to have things that would remind you or surprise you or make you curious or make you want to try. Oh man, my nana did that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and sometimes those things aren't even the glorious, cool, fun things. Like my daughter had questions recently about mental health of our past generations. Like, what
Yes,
did that look like? Is that part of the reason she might be struggling with something?
Yep.
And
exactly.
understanding, back then we didn't have labels for things. Even when I was a kid, nobody had ADHD, like that was unknown, right? But
Yeah.
people still exhibited those things. So even understanding some of our history from those terms can be helpful.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and like you said, and then medically, how did they? So my nana was born in 1887.
Wow.
My nana. I mean, I just think of that. And I was
Yeah.
11 when she died.
Yeah.
And she lived with us for, probably at least 5 or 6 years of my life. And I remember her, because when you're saying this, I'm like, I've got to get my brothers together. We've got to write my
Yeah.
mom's story, but
Yeah.
our nana's. Because I mean, imagine, I think of this, like I had a conversation with a person,
Yes.
like I knew her intimately,
Yes.
and she lived on a farm in the 1800s. And
Yes.
she told me the farm stories and going to town and penny taffy that you would buy when you went into the big city, and the beginning of planes and cars and electricity in your home and flush toilets. Who thought
Hmm.
that was ever gonna, like, all of these things that she would tell me, and I'm thinking, I'm just so blessed that but while I still have those stories and my brothers still have those stories in their minds, right? It would be so great so I'm going to be talking to my brothers about my nana and my mom to get these
Please
stories
do.
because
Please
I
do. We'd be
love
so
it.
excited to work with you.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
I love it. I just think,
And
uh
in that, those of you who attended our launch last week will know that we're still offering a big
ooh,
special right now, a launch special, and that
okay.
is 50% off for the first 10 people that sign up to do a chapter. So that is a one-time discount that we won't be offering again because it's our launch discount. So we're
Yeah, at the
excited.
beginning.
Can
And
I
I will
personally be the
say,
first 10 people?
Yep.
maybe, and I will say, and I did want to say this earlier, so this is a really great segue, that regardless of somebody being able to avail themselves of our, sort of business launch discount, it's still very affordable, even if they don't get in on that, because it is, a limited
It's
time offer. But here's the thing, that's one of the reasons why we are doing chapter length memoirs, because if somebody wants to hire a writing service or a ghostwriter or something to help them write their memoir, that can be up to $30,000.
I
It's not
bet, eh?
cheap to hire a writer. There's a lot of work that goes into it, not just the collecting of the information, the doing the interviews, the collating, the editing, everything. There's a lot of work that goes into writing a book and publishing a book. But we wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to participate in something like this without it costing them thousands. So, our price point per chapter is about $15.95, and we are offering this 50% discount for a limited time. But keep in mind that our regular price is already affordable. So literally everybody can do it.
Yes, it is.
Every,
And I would say, so I'll just say this part. So I have some experience in this area. So I have with a few different places, so not just under one, right? So with a few different places, I have been a co-author in some collaborative books. So I've done 2 chapters in one, another chapter. I did my own book. I've got my kids' books. So why I'm
Wow.
saying this is, 1595 is close to half of it's well under what I'm used to paying.
Yeah.
And when I say that, what I mean is that it's been made so affordable. I want to say this in the way that I mean it, because I'm not saying that other people overpriced or that this is underpriced. I just mean that I see that at this point, you're able to offer that at this price, which is really affordable. And especially I'm thinking, like, if you're thinking someone's thinking 15.95, I don't know if I can do that. Well, maybe you have brothers and sisters and you get
Yes.
together and it's a gift for a birthday
Yes.
or a Christmas or just a gift because we want to just give gifts. Um,
Mhm.
I think for me, I just see it as a really good investment because gone is gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody gets 5 printed copies of their book included in that price. So
Yeah.
they can give it to their family members. The
Wowzer.
book will also be available on Amazon and other places if there's members that are farther away that want to order it. So it's still going to be very professionally produced,
Yes.
with a cover that's done by a graphic designer and typesetter, and everything will look very professional.
Yeah.
And Kare, I'll say I don't know so much, and maybe you can tell me your background after, but because I know Anita's background and I know her background in publishing, and
Mhm.
I have worked with her on books that I've done myself, and I know her eye for detail, and I know that she knows more things than I ever knew I could have questions for about
Mhm.
publishing and creating and doing all that. And I'm going to guess that you were, so what was your inspiration and what are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table? Because I'm sure there's lots.
Well, I mean, it is a really good question. I do bring a lot of expertise in terms of like writing and editing. So I do
Oh,
have that as a
wow.
background. I got my early start professionally speaking in law. So right from the beginning of my professional life, it was all about crossing T's and dotting I's and being very precise and very perfect. And everything was writing, writing, writing. That's kind of how it was done back then. And during that time, I was a member of the Freelance Editors Association of Canada, so I did do a lot of editing back then, just as a sideline, but also within every professional job that I was working, I used all of those expertises. And then later on in life, I became a fiction writer and actually did win a short story contest once. So I'm an
Wow.
award-winning writer. And I
That's
am working
awesome.
on a couple of fiction pieces as well. Right now, I'm working on a novel about a homeless teenager in Vancouver,
Hmm.
which is super timely because this is, the way, unfortunately, a lot of young people are experiencing their lives, but that's not why I'm writing it. So yes, and I have a marketing and sales background as well. So I come to the table with a lot of writing and editing expertise and a lot of understanding of like target markets and sort of knowing how to bring stories out of people.
Wow, that's amazing. And Anita, maybe you tell a little bit. I mean, I could go on and on about you, but what would you like to share with our listeners about sort of so that they can understand what they're walking into?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I want to say, like, I love working with Care because she has the side of the brain that I don't have. And so we're finding this perfect balance between, oh, you want to do that task? And I'm like, take it, social media, go for it.
Yeah.
So I love working together with Care because of our opposite strengths. But like you said, I come from working with a publisher who also did collaborative books. So I learned all the administrative side of that, what it takes to upload a book, all the things you need in a book and that kind of thing. Um, I also worked for a company who published collaborative books themselves, so from the other side of it. And I have a chapter myself published in one of those collaborative books, and maybe it's one of the same ones as you, Ellie. I can't
Yeah,
remember
maybe.
if we're in the same one or not,
Yeah, I don't know
because that
either.
person did 10 books. So I have lots of experience from both sides of the collaborative book field, from the project coordinator and from the publishing side. So I love of what I've learned in those areas. I also love writing. I'm glad that Care loves editing, and I'm glad that she loves social media. So it's a perfect match.
It
Yeah.
is a perfect match. And what I love too is that you both bring to the so you both bring to the table all these years of experience in terms of the professional side. But it is nice to know that because I know what it's like. I call it the big red pen of Danielle Anderson. The big red pen editing. It's edit. You know, when you write something and you obviously you don't hand anything over until you think this is pretty. This is pretty cool. You know, and then an editor comes and looks at it with fresh eyes. And there's not really a big red pen, but there is kind of, right? There's like, hey, did you think what I love about editors and what you both are going to bring to this is there's a way that an editor comes in or another voice, a coach, as however we want to look at when someone comes in and says, had you considered this? Or you said what you wanted to share was this.
Yes.
Um, you're kind of going another direction. If you want to, that's fine. I just
Hmm.
want you to be aware that that's how it, because it's really easy to, as how do you say it, drift off the plumb line a little bit.
Yes.
And you know, we just start going along and that happens. So it's just you're bringing so much to this. I can't wait. I'm definitely going to I'm like put me down for the for one. For
Okay.
sure. I don't know what it will be yet. I don't know. I have no idea whether it will be my mom or my nana. I'm going to talk to my brothers. I'm
Do
going to
that.
ask them what if any interest they have in this and what if any input they would like to put into it and just see where it goes because man, it's just so great to have just a little clip of someone.
Yeah, we don't want those libraries to be lost. We want to capture what we can,
Yeah,
and we just, again, we want everybody to know that we believe that everyone has a story and every story should be told.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
Yeah.
love this a quote from the Egyptians, and I'm not reading it verbatim right now, but basically saying that we all die twice, once when we pass away and once when no one remembers or speaks our name again,
yes.
right?
That's how I've
And
heard it too. The last time someone speaks our name.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we hope through even having a chapter of wisdom, of understanding that people will speak your name forever.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow, time goes so fast. I
Yeah.
just, well, thank you so much. This is Anita Voth and Kare Jacoba, and this is DaisyChain Legacy Publishing. For our listeners, I will be making sure that all their contact information is going to be in the notes for you, the show notes, so that you will be able to get a hold of them, their website, all their contact information. This is a really good thing you're doing. This is
Thank you.
it's a service. It's so beautiful. It's
Hmm.
just it's so lovely. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it. I
Thank
really
you for
do.
having us.
Thanks. And to our listeners, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. Do look them up. I promise you're going to be glad that you did. And it's Ali. Oh, remember to like and subscribe. And take care. Find your joy. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you found a piece of your joy in this episode, I would love to hear about what came up for you so that we can continue to grow the impact of this show. Thanks again. See you soon. And remember, find your joy.